Hey guys, Spud here, and today we have a recording of a one-on-one lesson with one of my patrons. I know I haven't been posting many of these lately, but I'll try to get back to it because I know a lot of you guys out there learn quite a bit from them. This awesome channel supporter was just getting into DCS World to join his friends in multiplayer missions, and needed some help getting up to speed in the F-16C Viper. In this lesson, we went over starting up the aircraft, the basics of communicating with ATC, taxiing, takeoffs, navigation, autopilot usage, unguided munitions employment with a proper roll-in maneuver, and the basics of landing the F-16C. While we definitely had a few helmet fires, he did really well and I could see his confidence growing by the end of the lesson. Keep in mind guys, I do one-on-one training sessions with all of my patrons as a perk of supporting the channel with $15 or more. Thanks, enjoy this beautiful game, fly safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one. Yep. Same thing on the AOA indicator on the left-hand side. You can adjust the brightness on that as well.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll go ahead and taxi on out. I'll follow you out.
Did you say left and right?
It's going to be a right followed by a right. I'll give you progressive taxi instructions, so I won't let you get lost.
Okay.
So it's going to be just a kind of a big right-hand turn, and another right-hand turn. So keep going straight, and try to get on that yellow center line. Put your butt right on that yellow center line if you can.
Oh,
that's just off to your left-hand side. Yep. And I'll have you stop right here for me. Cool. So what we're in right now is called the non-movement area. What that means it is this area around these hangars off to our right-hand side, or shelters I should say, are basically uncontrolled. So you can move your jet wherever you want inside here, but once you get to right here where we're going to enter onto named taxiways, that's entering the movement area where we need to have that clearance from a ground controller. So the ground controller already gave us permission to taxi to runway 9 via Alpha, so it's going to be a left-hand turn up here. The yellow signs off to the left and right show us where the taxiways are. So a yellow sign with black letters is a taxiway that you can join by either going left on Alpha or right on Bravo. And then also on air bases you'll see a black sign with yellow lettering. And a black sign with yellow lettering is where you are, so what taxiway you're already on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go left here. Just take these turns nice and slow, nice and easy. It's very easy to accidentally tip over an F-16.
Yeah, I've done that.
One of the things to remember and kind of like think about is think of your jet on the ground being more like a very unstable and unstoppable freight train.
Right.
We can't stop very well, and we can't turn very well. So in the air we might be a sports car, but on the ground we're a freight train. So if you're in a big mission with lots of pilots around, you don't want to taxi any faster than about 12 knots or so. And on turns,
speed on the ground.
So on the ground here, if we go to, on our DED and UFC, we go to list, and we go to do number 6 INS, we can see a ground speed readout on the bottom right of the DED.
Oh, okay, sick.
Yeah. We'll talk about different kinds of airspeeds once we get up into the air.
Okay. Yeah, I was always guesstimating on this. I didn't know you could see it.
Yep. You almost never have to guesstimate in the F-16. It gives you lots of different ways to see the information, and it usually repeats that information in different formats. So if you're looking for a piece of information, the jet will typically give you it in 3 different ways. And we'll make a right-hand turn here. And we can see taxiway signs as well as runway signs. So you can see we're turning right onto Alpha here, which is the black sign with yellow letters. And the red sign is showing us what runways we're about to enter. And go ahead and stop right there for me. So, do you know why this is runway 9? Like, do you know what the reasoning behind why it's called runway 9?
If I understand right, one of the videos I watched, if you're coming in left or right here, you'd be bearing 009, right?
Oh, I can barely hear you. Let me turn down my in-game volume and turn you up some more.
Okay.
Options. Okay, sorry. What did you say?
Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
So, if I understood one of the videos I watched correctly, like this is runway 9.
Yep.
So, if you were coming in left to right here, you would be bearing 009, right? It's the bearing that you would have.
Yeah. So once you're lined up on the runway, it would actually be 090. So it's runway 9 because you'd be at a heading of 090 degrees.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. Which is due east.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so once we are holding short of a runway, we of course need permission to take off from the tower controller. So we would be switching frequencies from a ground controller over to a tower controller, and then once we're on with the tower, again using the same format, we'd ask him for takeoff. So we'd say something to the effect of Almanhad Tower, Spud 11, flight of 2 F-16s, holding short, runway 9, ready for takeoff. And the tower controller could come back with one of 3 different replies and options that he has to give you clearance. The easiest one is just Spud 11, clear for takeoff, runway 9. In which case, the runway is ours, we can take it and take off at our leisure.
Okay.
The second one would be Roger, Spud 11, hold short, runway 9, which just means stay where you're at, hold short of the runway because somebody is still landing or somebody is still on the takeoff roll. The third option, which is a little bit more complex, but controllers in my missions will use it in order to make runway use more efficient and get jets off the ground or onto the ground faster, is line up and wait. So he would say Spud 11, line up and wait, runway 9. Which means line up on the runway and get ready for takeoff, but don't take off yet till I tell you you're cleared for takeoff. Make sense? So we'll go ahead and line up on the runway, and as we're taking the runway, we just want to do some last-minute checks, make sure our caution advisories panel is out. We don't have anything there. We've got everything set and ready to go in the cockpit. Everything's looking good, and we'll take the runway.
When do we deal with trim?
That's not gonna. So, I'm glad you brought that up. So, in the F-16, it is a self-trimming aircraft because it has a fly-by-wire system. So what that means for us is we're not going to use trim as we fly until we need to use it, which is going to be for having an asymmetrical load on the aircraft as we drop bombs or due to some kind of fuel imbalance, things of that nature. So,
okay, so you would do it as you go?
Yep, as you go. It's not something that we have to set here on the ground.
Okay, cool.
Yep, so let's go ahead and line up on the runway and we'll talk about how to perform a formation takeoff.
Okay.
So if you can, instead of lining up directly in the middle of the runway, line up in the middle of the left-hand side of the runway.
Okay. And this may be like a dumb question, but I'm asking because it's DCS. Is there any way to use the F-16 with the supercarrier?
No, not really. The game is hard-coded not to let you spawn on the carrier.
Right on.
Yep, so go ahead and pull forward just a little bit more for me. Kind of get somewhere near where it says 09 on the runway.
Okay.
Alright. And see how there's kind of like a middle stripe, but on the left-hand side of the runway? That's just what you want to get lined up on.
Okay.
And for a formation takeoff, it's basically all about trying to take off smoothly in a way that's not going to leave your wingman in the dust, like myself here. So
okay.
What we'll do is we're going to hold our brakes. We're going to run up our engines to full military power. We're going to release our brakes, and then we'll push our engines over into afterburner, and we'll go down the runway together. With this big loadout here, we'll probably rotate somewhere in the neighborhood of about 130 knots of indicated airspeed. Sound good?
Yeah, can you say how we do that again? You hold our brakes down.
Yep, so go ahead and hold your brakes.
Okay. Ground brakes, right? Not the speed brake?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And then go, so your wheel brakes are held. Now push your throttle up to full military power. And
Is
then
that all the way up?
Yep, release your brakes. Now.
Okay.
And full afterburner. Nice job.
Oh, okay.
And start rotating off the runway.
Do we rotate right or left?
Get your gear up. I just want you to climb up. We're going to climb up at about 7.5 degrees nose up.
Where do you see your degrees?
So 7 degrees nose up, I should say, not 7.5. But it's kind of blocked by the sun here, but it's on the pitch ladder of your HUD. So you're climbing up way steep. You're climbing up like almost practically vertically. So start bringing that nose down.
Yeah.
Because climbing up that vertically is going to make you shake your wingman real quick.
Okay.
And we're just going to fly out towards waypoint 1, and we're going to level off at 15,000 feet. So come right for waypoint 1.
I can't see you with the sun right there.
Look at your HSD, right?
Yeah, I am. That's the only way I can see.
Yep. So like I said, the jet has multiple ways of showing you the same info.
Are you still in afterburner?
Nope, let's get out of afterburner.
Okay.
And let's go for an airspeed of about 400 knots indicated.
Okay. Is there an easy way to do that, or just slow down?
Just slow down.
Okay.
And keep climbing to 15,000 for me.
Okay.
And we'll level off at 15,000. And when you hit waypoint 1, we'll make a left-hand turn towards waypoint 2.
Okay. We're flying right to the sun.
Yep, we'll be out of it soon.
Yep. So I'm going about 7.5 right now, right? Angle,
Yep.
I mean?
Yep.
Okay. Between the 10 and the 5.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I couldn't see that earlier, but makes sense now.
Okay.
Almost at
And
15,000.
we're definitely past waypoint 1, right? So let's go ahead and head to steer point 2.
I think I was too focused on the seeing. I didn't pay attention to that.
It's all good. And check your airspeed. You're really slow now.
I'm going 269.
Yep, so try and really maintain a nice stable airspeed and a stable altitude for me.
Okay.
So we're getting a little low, right? And you're descending. So go ahead and climb back up to 15,000 and try to maintain that. Once you're at 15,000, just keep your velocity vector right on that big horizontal line that goes across your HUD, which represents the horizon, so that way you're flying nice and level.
Okay.
Push that throttle up so that way you start accelerating. Want to get back to 400 knots indicated. Not quite accelerating yet, so push that throttle all the way up. Get back to 400 knots for me.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to inch it, and it's just.
Well, going from 270 to 400 is going to go take a bit of oomph. All right, there we go. Now I can see you accelerating, and now we're climbing through 15,000. So bring that nose down. Try to really level off at 15,000 for me.
Okay. That's where the autopilot would be nice.
Yep, exactly. But we got to be able to hand fly that too.
Yep.
The reason why I'm being so militant about it is the more precise you can fly and the more gentle you can fly, the easier it's going to be for you to use things like the targeting pod, as well as laser-guided bombs and JDAMs and things like that.
Right. Well, I didn't know this had autopilot. That's what I mean. Like, now that I know it has it, now I can see where... Alright. So now how do I stay here without going down too much?
Put the velocity vector, that little airplane on your HUD, right on the horizon line, which is that horizontal green line that goes across your HUD.
Okay.
So pull it back, pull your stick back. See that that horizontal line right at the top of your HUD? That's the horizon. So put your velocity vector wings right in that little break in the horizon line, and then you'll be flying straight and level. Yep. And then just inch it up just slightly to climb back up to 15,000.
Right.
And check your airspeed.
I'm going 5, 12.
Yep.
I'll slow down a little bit.
To pull that throttle back and slow down. The F-16 doesn't have an auto throttle, so you got to get used to trying to maintain an airspeed by modulating your throttle. Your throttle should really be moving kind of all the time.
Okay.
Trying to catch up with you here, but you're definitely outrunning me.
I'm slowing down still.
It's all good. So one of the reasons why it's so important to fly nice and smooth and maintain consistent air speeds and altitudes is because if you're leading a flight of jets, your wingmen are consistently going to use about 20 to 30% more gas than you because they're trying to fly in formation with you. And so the smoother you are and the easier you are on changes and things like that, the more fuel your wingmen are going to save.
Right.
Alright, so if you've got 15,000 pretty well, we'll go ahead and turn on the autopilot. So on those two autopilot switches, the two switches you're going to use the most are going to be, or the switch you're going to use the most is going to be on the right-hand side labeled pitch. You want to bring that up to the alt hold mode to turn on the altitude hold mode of the autopilot.
Okay. So that'll hold me at 14.95 then?
Yep, exactly.
Do I break that if I roll or move at all?
Yep, so if you move the stick too violently, it will kick the autopilot off. However, the jet is now in what's called steering wheel mode, essentially, where now your stick is more like a steering wheel, and if you bank the jet left or right, the jet will automatically maintain the altitude, and it will just make you have a nice gentle turn left or right.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for instance, let's go ahead and turn right to a heading of about 040. They're not too steep, so you're going to kick the autopilot off being that violent with it. You want to be nice and gentle. Fly it like an airliner rather than a fighter jet.
Okay.
And then gently come back to the waypoint. Nice and gentle. Alright. Let's do that again. See, I think your autopilot may have kicked off because you were a little violent on the controls. So take what you just did and do like 25% of how much you move the stick there. Nice and smooth, nice and gentle, nice and easy. So get back to altitude, get the autopilot back on. And then start coming back to the right, heading 040. Nice and smooth, nice and gentle. As painfully smooth and gentle as you possibly can. Nice, that's much better. It's going to be much easier for a wingman to fly with you. And it's going to be much better for your targeting pod to be able to track a target, things of that nature.
Okay.
Okay, we'll keep flying out towards our waypoint here.
Good.
Now, the other switch of the autopilot is for the roll mode of your autopilot.
Okay.
And so bringing that switch to the down position where it says steering select or STRG select will make the jet automatically fly to your currently selected waypoint. So go ahead and turn that on.
Okay.
And now the jet is automatically flying you to steer point 2. And it's maintaining your altitude because you've got altitude hold mode turned on. And so, yeah, so now the jet's just completely flying itself, and you can spend more brain cells doing other stuff like using the radar, targeting pod, things of that nature.
Right.
All right. So check your airspeed. You're getting slow.
336. Yep.
And now I'm finally saddled up on your right-hand side. So the smoother and easier you fly the jet, the easier it is for me to fly in formation with you.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's push it back up to about 400 or so. And go ahead and turn the steering mode on the autopilot off.
Yeah, I don't know how to hold my speed very well.
So one thing to think about is in your car, when you push down the gas pedal, your car accelerates, right? And it accelerates more or less instantaneously. Jet engines aren't like that. So jet engines require some time for enough fuel to get into the combustion chambers, enough air to be compressed in those combustion chambers, to spin up the turbine even faster, to keep the perpetual motion of a jet engine, keep it on going. So it takes a while for your throttle inputs to actually make anything happen with the jet. And as a result, because of that slight delay, you're always going to be moving your throttle constantly. And you need to anticipate what the jet's going to do next. Alright, so we just passed waypoint 2. So what we'll do here is we'll just enter into a little bit of a holding pattern over the Lucendon Peninsula down below us. And that way we can set up our weapons to drop some bombs.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and I just want you to very gently roll the jet to the right-hand side. And that way we will have your altitude hold mode on your autopilot on. And that way we can also set up our weapons.
Okay.
Okay. Next, I want you to go to air-to-ground master mode on your ICP, which is the row of keys right in front of you.
Okay.
And you can see that changing over to other screens on your MFDs made them go dim again, so you can turn up the brightness once again. And once you got the brightness up, we have the SMIS or SMS page, the Stores Management System, up on the right-hand MFD now, and that will populate by default. And so you select weapons by hitting the top button on the right-hand side, and we only have one weapon on board at the moment, so it's very easy for us to just go ahead and set up our Mark 82s.
Okay.
And let's see, is your autopilot altitude hold mode still on?
It was, but it wasn't working.
Okay, go ahead and turn it off and then back on again. Awesome.
It's still going down a little bit.
Oh, that's kind of odd. You may have been... sometimes the autopilot, if you are too violent with the stick, it'll think something's wrong with the jet, and it'll kick off. And you can't turn it back on again.
Oh, damn.
Yep. So it's because the jet thinks that there's something wrong with the aircraft, and it doesn't want to have the autopilot get you into a bad position.
Okay.
Okay. So, the bombs by default are basically all set up and ready to go for you to drop the bombs in singles.
Okay.
And so we're in what's called CCIP mode, or constantly computed impact mode, for delivery of our bombs. Try and maintain 15,000 if you can. Just keep that velocity vector right on the horizon as we keep this right-hand turn coming. And so essentially you can see when we went to air-to-ground master mode, we could see some new symbology up on the HUD. Coming out of the velocity vector, we have this long vertical line with a little bullseye at the bottom. You see that?
Yeah.
So essentially that is how we aim our bombs. You just want to put the bullseye on your target as we're diving down to it, and then press the pickle button, and that will drop a bomb, and it'll impact where that bullseye is.
Okay.
One wrinkle in this is the fact that the fall line, which is that big vertical line, has a little hash mark across it, kind of like roughly about a third of the way down. Do you see that?
Yeah, I do.
So that's what's called the reflected reticle indicator. The actual bullseye where the bombs are going to impact the ground is below the field of view of the HUD. So as you dive, you'll see that little hash mark get lower and lower and lower, and once it disappears completely, that's when you know the actual CCIP bullseye there is valid, and the bombs will actually hit the ground where you press the pickle button. That make sense?
And pickle is the same as the missile release, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to do what's called fencing in, which is essentially how you get your aircraft ready to go for combat. So the few things that we need to check include our fuel. We want to check how much fuel we have, make sure we have plenty available to us to actually engage in combat. Next, we want to bring our master arm switch to the armed position. And then we want to ensure that our countermeasures are good to go, whether that be our jammer pod or our actual chaff and flare buckets. So we want to make sure those guys are all on and ready to go. We want to check and make sure that our RWR is on. And then finally, we want to douse our external lights. So use that master external light switch and bring it all the way to the off position to turn off all those lights.
Which one is it?
The master switch, where it go from norm all the way to off.
Okay. Did I do that?
Let me double check for you. Look down there again. And so that's the IFF master switch. It's the other master switch that's inboard of that. So definitely bring the IFF switch back to norm. And then the other switch is literally right next to your left hip in the cockpit here. It's inboard of that master IFF switch. It is the master external lighting switch. So look down and to the left a little bit more. See it right there, right on the edge?
This one?
Yep. Go ahead and turn that off. And there you go. Now your external lights are turned off.
Okay.
And we are fenced in and ready to go. The radio call for this, your flight lead will say something to the effect of, Spud 1 flight, fence in. and you'll do all those things, and then once your jet is ready to go for combat, you're going to come back on the radio to them and say, Spud 1-2 is fenced in, state 1.9, or whatever your fuel state is. So I currently have 1.9 on my fuel. What's your fuel state?
I'm not sure how to read that.
So your fuel is the little gauge to the right of the TIT gauge for your engine.
Right.
The totalizer's on the bottom, so it's going to be, I've got 9,100 pounds, and that's expressed as 9.1 to other pilots.
Okay.
So
So I'm at like 8.4.
Okay, perfect. Probably leaning on the afterburner a little too much.
Probably.
So from here, let's go ahead and fly out to waypoint 3, where we've got some targets set up for us.
Waypoint 3.
And it's that little star.
Yep, exactly, off to the left-hand side. Just follow
Okay.
that guy. And you'll also see that you now have a little arrow pointing towards it, and the number of degrees off to the left-hand side. Actually, scratch that, never mind. That was for my data link track.
Trying to get back to 15K.
Yep,
Hold
we're
at
right.
the horizon.
Yep, we're basically right at 15K right now.
Okay.
So our target is going to be the airfield on Greater Tomb Island, and we'll just take turns just dropping bombs on it, and should be no problem. So what we want to do to actually drop our bombs is ideally we'll want to execute what's called a roll-in maneuver, where we are going to fly offset just slightly to the right of our target, and we're going to roll over and pull our nose down to the target once the target crosses roughly about 45 degrees behind our nose. So you can see that island out there? That's our target. So let's come to the right just slightly. Let's go for a heading of about 280 or so. Let's see what that gives us.
Okay.
That should be good.
Okay.
The reason we do a roll-in maneuver is because it's going to put positive G's on our jet. Our jet is stressed for more positive G's than negative G's, rather than just pushing the nose over to get into a dive. Our body takes positive G's better than negative G's as well. And it prevents us from losing the target behind our nose, because if we fly directly at it, we're not going to be able to see it, because our cockpit is going to block our line of sight to the target. Okay. It's also going to prevent us from accidentally hitting our own bombs on the way down the chute, because it's going to prevent us from accidentally dropping that bomb while putting negative G on the aircraft.
So it's best to drop the bomb while you're rotating?
No. We'll take a look. I'll show you in just a second.
Okay.
Yep.
I was trying to follow, but...
Yeah, it's all good. It's a lot of information, so if you only can pick out and remember little bits from today, that's totally fine. So keep that 280 heading for me.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I was turning towards it.
Yep, so we don't want to fly directly at the target, because we won't be able to see it if we're directly at the target, right?
Yep, makes sense.
It also makes it harder for bad guys to shoot at us if we're not flying directly at them, because they have to be pulling lead from their AA guns to actually be able to hit us. Whereas if we were flying directly at them, it's much easier to hit us with AA guns.
Right.
Alright. Let's come back to the left just slightly. Let's come to a heading of 270. Try not to use those rudders. Just roll the jet.
Okay.
And there you go, right there. Roll out.
Okay.
And we're just waiting for that target. I want you to hit the runway. Anywhere on the runway is totally fine. We're just waiting a little bit more. We're just being patient, waiting for the proper moment for the roll-in.
So when you say rolling, then it's like at the last second we turn and then go bomb the target?
Yep, exactly. So I'm going to walk you through it here. I'm just going to put my aircraft on autopilot so I can walk you through it.
Okay.
And roll to the left and keep rolling, roll left, keep going, almost upside down, almost all the way upside down.
Okay.
And now pull down onto the target, roll back wings level.
Okay.
And don't use your rudders. Push forward on the stick here, so we weren't quite aggressive enough on the roll-in. So push forward on the stick, keep coming down the chutes.
Yep.
Keep coming down. Alright, no more pushing forward. And now we just want to fly that bullseye onto the runway and press the pickle button. And pull off the target. You dropped the bomb, so pull off. And the bomb's still falling. And fell a little bit short. That's okay. So when you press the pickle button, try not to press and hold the button. Just give it one quick press.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed I did that.
Yeah, the reason why we want just one quick press is pressing and holding is going to put the jet into a different bombing mode. I'm just trying to show you this most simple bombing technique.
Right.
And so climb back on up to 15,000 feet. So on that one, we want to roll first, then pull. You are rolling and pulling at the same time, which makes you kind of do a bit of a barrel roll and climbing into the maneuver. And we didn't get our nose far enough down towards the target, and that's why you had to push forward on the stick. And ideally,
I wasn't sure what you meant.
Yeah. Yep. So, just keep in mind, just for specificity of language purposes, roll means roll the stick left and right. Pull means pull back on the stick, right? So I was saying roll, so I just wanted you to roll the jet over. You were gonna roll, and then you're gonna pull the nose down onto the target, as opposed to rolling and pulling. Which is definitely a new concept. Alright. So I'll go ahead and have you fly a little bit a ways from the target here, so that way you can get set up and perform another attack. So now you can see that if you let go of the stick, you can feel the jet kind of rolling to one side, correct?
Yeah.
So that's what trim is for.
Okay.
So release pressure on the stick and then tap towards the side that the jet is rising on. So you want to tap that left wing down trim until the jet stops rolling.
Okay.
And now you look like you're pretty trimmed out. So now you can start flying again. So you see how that kind of balanced out and stabilized out the airplane for you?
Yeah.
Awesome. Go ahead and climb back up to 15,000.
I gotta get better at altitude.
That's all good. You got a giant helmet fire going on right now, so it's all good. That's what you call it when a pilot gets overwhelmed in training, is you call it a helmet fire.
Oh, right on. Alright. It should be 15,000.
Awesome. And go ahead and turn back around towards our target. And now that we're in combat, you can be a little bit more aggressive. We've already broken the formation, so definitely be a little bit more aggressive with your turns. You want to kind of like, it's kind of hard, it's kind of like you need to know like when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. Flying in formation, flying to the target, no need to be aggressive. Over the target, be more aggressive. Make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. I don't mind that you're climbing at all, that's no problem. Ideally, the higher we are when we drop our bomb, the better. Because the lower we get, the more vulnerable we get from more and more AAA guns down there. Everything from large caliber AAA all the way to a guy with a rifle.
Right.
So we're going to keep turning to the right, and we're going to bring our nose further to the right than just the target area. Keep an eye on your altitude, getting a little on the low side now. Keep coming to the right for me, keep coming right, just to set up that good rolling maneuver. Nice, keep coming right, try to level off on the altitude, so that way we can see the target, and roll out.
Okay.
Nice, we can see the target, perfect. On this one, I'll tell you when to stop rolling.
Okay. So don't even turn towards it.
Yeah, don't turn towards it yet. It's okay, so start rolling, roll left, roll left, roll left, roll left, roll left, now pull. Pull your nose down to the target. There you go, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling. And roll out. And now you're in the dive. Does that make sense? How we separated out the roll and the pull?
Yep.
Fantastic. We were just offset from the target a little bit far, and that's why our dive is so shallow. Waiting for that reflected reticle to march on down, just like you are now. Line up that target you want to drop on, right on the fall line, and now your reticle is valid.
So now once the circle is on something, it'll
hit it, yep.
Okay.
Remember, quick press on the pickle button this time.
Yep.
And pickle, and now pull up, pull up, pull up. Don't fly formation with that bomb. A lot of new DCS World players will end up still in the dive after they've dropped the bomb, and they end up hitting their own bomb and then wondering why they just exploded randomly.
Oh, shit. So now, if my radar was on soy, my left MFD, would the bomb still have dropped?
Yeah, that would have been no problem.
Okay.
Yep. So when you're dropping bombs in CCIP mode, the radar goes over to what's called AGR, or air-to-ground raging mode, because your jet is essentially doing a continuous Pythagorean theorem to determine where the reticle is pointing. So it's basically creating a triangle, like a mathematical triangle, to figure out where the bomb is going to drop. And it does this through the very accurate ranging of using the radar as to where the ground is out in front of you. That makes sense?
Where do you want me to go, by the way?
Just kind of fly out away from the island and just keep on practicing. We got 4 more bombs left.
Okay. So are these considered dumb bombs?
Yep, exactly. These are unguided dumb bombs. Alright, so it looks like you're about 9 miles from the target, so let's come back around towards it, and we'll try it again.
Okay. Not meaning to climb either.
Yep.
Keep it to where I can see it.
Yep.
Okay.
And go ahead and level off. You're still descending, so you're getting more vulnerable the lower you get, right?
Yep.
Alright. And just wait. Be patient, be patient, be patient, be patient. And go ahead and roll. Roll. Keep rolling, 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 keep rolling. And pull down. Roll back wings level. There you go. That was great. And but don't pull back as you're rolling, right? Because that's why you brought that nose up and kind of ruined our dive.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we're separating out the roll and the pull.
Okay.
And pull off, pull off, pull off, pull off. Don't fly formation with that bomb. Alright, now climb back on up. Okay. And so once you drop the bomb, obviously you get pretty darn asymmetrical, right? And that's why you rolled off to the right-hand side. Was that intentional, or was that kind of like what's happening?
No, I dropped the bomb, and then when you said that, I just jerked to get myself out of the way faster, I guess. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Safest thing is just climb. Climb, 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 climb. Alright, so you got... And make sure you use that trim hat to trim the jet out.
So are other planes different? Like you don't do it as you go?
In terms of trim?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in a lot of other jets, specifically non-fly-by-wire jets, like if you started flying the F-14, you would be constantly trimming it all the time. And that would be just a requirement of flying the airplane. So as a result, like the F-18 and the F-16 are much easier to fly because the jet is auto-trimming for you, except for in the roll.
So high.
Yep. Just try to separate out in the dive that roll and that pull. So you did a really good job on the initial roll and pulling your nose down to the target, but when you rolled back to wings level in the dive to drop your bomb, you were still pulling back on the stick, and that's why you climbed right out of your dive and didn't get your reticle down onto the target. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Something I'm gonna have to work on.
Yep. That's no problem. Okay. Just passed right underneath you.
Yep, I saw you. So what do you think of like U.S. versus China capabilities in terms of Air Force?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a really broad question.
Like I was military. I grew up in the Air Force, and it's like I know what I know we're capable of.
Yeah.
But I think we underrate China. You know, like I don't think it would be good. I still think we're on top. I just think, you know.
Yeah, I think that they're a lot more like the Russians than we give them credit for. So I think that they're kind of a bit of a paper tiger, but still dangerous.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's like you're far enough away from the target now, so come on in and go forward again.
So with dumb bombs, you always want to do the roll?
Ideally. It's basically the most basic tactic that I can teach you here to get you going with it. And it's like the first weapon delivery method that they talk or teach pilots in UPT as well.
Oh, right on.
Alright, so that's looking good. You're set up really well, but you're descending. Don't use the rudders. You're way overusing the rudders.
Okay.
So the rudders in the F-16 are basically more or less just for being on the ground. For our purposes today.
Okay.
Yeah, so leave those rudders alone. Keep going, keep going. I'll tell you when to roll.
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going. The more patient we are, the steeper our dive is, which is better. And start it. Go for it. Roll, 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 roll. Keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling. And pull. Pull the nose down.
Roll.
Okay, stop the pull and roll.
Okay.
There you go. See? That looked much better, right? Now, pull back on the stick to get that reticle onto your target.
Okay.
So that was much, much better. That was awesome. And pickle. Nice. Pull off, pull off, pull off, pull off. Don't fly formation with that bomb. If you explode randomly, then don't blame it on me, right?
Right.
Because if you hit that bomb, you are going to explode. As well as all the assholes down there shooting at you. The lower you get, the worse it's going to get for that.
I haven't even seen it, the explosions these bombs do.
Yep, so basically, if you on the pull-up, if you roll off to one side and keep pulling, then you can kind of look over your shoulder and see your bomb impact. Looking good. Alright, for this next one, I'm not going to say anything. I'll have you do it all by yourself.
Alright.
What's your fuel state?
It's almost 9. I would say 8.6.
Okay, perfect.
If I'm reading it right.
Yeah, so in the F-16, your rudders are, because the jet is fly-by-wire, the jet automatically uses the rudders for you. So you
So when you say-
basically,
When
yeah.
you say fly by wire, what exactly do you mean by that? Is this not
So-
all aircraft like that?
Nope. So, like, let's take for instance like a Cessna 172. The controls in a Cessna are connected via cables and pulleys to the actual control surfaces. So you're acting on the yoke in, say, a Cessna 172 actually deflects the control surfaces, like, physically. However, in a fly-by-wire airplane, the controls in your jet are connected to a computer, and the computer then tells the control surfaces how to move in order to give you what you want and what you're telling the jet you want from the controls. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so there's no physical connection between your controls and the control surfaces of the aircraft. And so what that means is the jet can be made very unstable, which increases performance for maneuverability and still be flyable by a human pilot. And so in the F-16 and the F-18, it's already using the rudder for you. So if you just need to, say, make a small correction in heading, you just roll the stick left or right, as opposed to putting in rudder. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The way you were using the rudder earlier is also too much for really any airplane.
Was
And if
it?
and if you're especially in like larger airplanes, if you're too rough on the rudder, you can actually rip the entire tail off,
Oh.
which is not good. So see how much altitude you're losing in that turn?
Yeah.
So try and bring that nose up. Bring that nose up. The steeper your bank angle, the further you have to pull the stick back to maintain altitude. Because what we're doing is we're killing our vertical component of lift, and so we have to increase our angle of attack in those steep bank angles in order to generate more lift in order to maintain altitude. And if we bank all the way to about 90 degrees like you were there, you can pull as hard as you want and you won't be able to maintain altitude.
Alright.
So wait on it, wait on it, wait on it, just a little bit more. And I'm not going to say anything more. You do it.
Okay.
Nice, looking good. Roll the jet to get the nose over there. Roll and pull. Yep. No rudders. I like it. Nice. And good job pulling off the target this time. And if you look over your right shoulder, roll right now, and look over your right shoulder, and you should see the bomb impact the runway.
There we go.
And there it is. Just barely missed.
Right on.
Alright, how many bombs you got left here?
1, I think.
Okay. If they were on the inboard racks and you couldn't see them, if you look on your SMIS page, in the top right, where it says M82, there's a 1 next to it.
Okay.
And that's the quantity of weapons you have on your aircraft.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put a string of all 6 of my bombs right down the runway.
Yeah, I gotta work on my staying at altitude better.
Yep. But it's also, you know, it's all learning experience, and it all just takes practice.
What's your favorite aircraft in DCS to use?
I like different airplanes for different reasons, I suppose. I think my favorite airplane of all time is the F4, so I'm super excited for that to come out. I really like the F-15E and the F-14. But honestly, all the jets are fun to fly for different reasons.
Do you do helicopters too, or just fixed wing?
Yep, I fly the Apache around, and I've flown I have the Mi-24 and the Mi-8. I fly those around.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You do those in your missions at all, or no?
Yeah, I definitely have Apache missions that I've done. I'm actually sitting on some footage right now that I need to edit and put out there for a mission video in the Apache.
And would this be too soon?
Nope, that's perfect. Roll. You're going to be nice and steep on this one, which is great. Looking good.
Altitude.
And now that we've dropped off all of our bombs, we will go ahead and start flying on home.
Let's do it.
So go ahead and turn to a heading of roughly 170, and I'll join up on you.
Alright, get to 15,000 feet as well.
Yep. So keep an eye on your airspeed. Let's bring it down to about 400 indicated.
Is there a waypoint?
Yeah, stand by. Let me find the number for you. But it's just fly 170 on the heading for now.
Okay.
Pier point 7 is the waypoint we want to go for. So it's going to be a slight right-hand turn.
Okay.
Start pulling the throttle back to bring that speed down for me. Let's go for about 400 knots.
Yeah, I'm slowly doing it. I need to pick it up. Do you jettison your fuel tanks before you land?
No, I don't. Well, so, I guess it depends on if you want to fly realistically or not. So, in real life, a pilot would only jettison his fuel tanks in an emergency. So,
Okay.
that could be like, oh man, I just got jumped by MiGs. Or, I just got a SAM fired at me, or something, something like that, where you need that extra performance right away. Or, I have a problem with my airplane, or something like that. So let's go ahead and fly to waypoint 7, which is going to be off to our right-hand side. And, do you know how to selectively jettison your external tanks?
I have, yeah. I just didn't know if you were
Okay.
supposed to do that before landing or what.
Nope. Because those tanks are expensive. So we can't be wasting those taxpayer dollars.
Right. Fair enough.
But yeah, so that you would never just be dumping your tanks willy-nilly. And also, for reasons of, right now we're over the ocean, but if you're over land, like say you're flying close air support over a rock or something like that, you might be dumping your tanks onto civilians down below. Kind of a funny thing is so many external tanks got dumped in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia during the Vietnam War that people who lived there would cut them in half and turn them into canoes.
Is that true? I feel like I've read that somewhere.
Yep, it's totally true. behind that airspeed. We're getting below 400 now. Just always need to be moving that throttle, always paying attention. So one thing to kind of develop here, and I'm not quite sure if you're doing it already or not, but we want to develop what's called an instrument scan, where we are scanning across the cockpit all the time in a bit of a pattern. I like to go from center at the top, around to the right, and back up to center to the top. And so we want to keep in mind keep in our scan our navigation, so whether we're headed to a waypoint or not, or holding the correct heading, our altitude, our airspeed, and any other systems we might have in the cockpit. So I like to sweep my head around, or at least my eyeballs around, from the right top middle to the right side, along to the left side, and back up to the top middle.
Okay.
And if you kind of develop that scan of trying to keep everything within your vision at all times, that's going to really help you with kind of like, oh man, I'm off the altitude, oh man, I'm off the speed, you know, and then kind of neglecting one of those to the detriment of others.
Right.
One thing that I'm interested to see here is if you do want to keep your external tanks on your aircraft, I think in the F-16 it might actually help you with landing the aircraft, because it's going to make you a bit draggier and allow you to slow down a little bit easier.
That could be one of my issues, because my problem is when I land, I don't know how to slow down. I need like a 6-mile long runway, you know?
Yeah, so one thing the F-16 is designed around, which is difficult, and it's why it's probably the hardest jet to learn how to fly, or I guess at least to learn how to land in DCS, is the fact that it requires aero braking. Oh, and if you didn't see me, I'm saddled up on your right-hand side. What aero braking means is when you land with your nose up, right? You never see a jet land nose down. So your main wheels touch down on the runway first, but then you pull back on the stick very gently and just enough to do a wheelie down the runway. And that wheelie down the runway uses your wings and your fuselage like a big air brake to slow you down even more so than just getting the nose wheel on the ground and getting on the brakes. Does that make sense?
So
yeah.
Interesting. I wasn't sure if you pull back or if you push down or if you did that at all when you landed.
So
but I didn't know if it was just brakes.
If you touch down perfectly with a perfect angle of attack and a perfect gentle touchdown on your main wheels, then the nose of the aircraft will stay up. And you just have to pull back on the stick to maintain and keep it up as long as possible. You want to do that wheelie down the runway as long as you possibly can until the jet just physically runs out of energy and there's no more lift to keep your nose up. And then the nose wheel should ideally gently come down to the ground, and that's when you get on your brakes. If you get on your brakes while you do the wheelie, that's going to force your nose down. We don't want that. We want to use that aero braking for as long as we possibly can.
Okay, do you hit the speed brake on the way down?
So we want to hit the speed brake as soon as, if not before, we get the gear down. So what we'll do here is I'll put my jet on autopilot, and I'll just let it fly in a circle here while I kind of guide you through it.
Okay.
And then I'll share my screen, and I'll show you what a landing from my perspective is going to look like.
Perfect.
And that way it'll give you a nice sight picture for the next time you practice. And hopefully I don't fuck it up for you and like do a terrible landing.
No. It's a lot of good information.
Yep, and like I said, I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now, and I know that you're probably not going to retain all of it, and that's totally fine. We just want to try and take sips from the fire hose.
Right. Is there an easy way to mark a friendly though without having to like dig through this panel?
Mark a friendly? In what way?
Like if I'm playing online with my buddies.
Well, if you're using data link, then they should already be showing up as friendlies, unless somebody's being a dingus and didn't turn on their IFF.
Okay.
What is probably a bad guy is either going to be marked as unknown, which is white in this jet, or as red, which is definitely a bad guy. So we'll go ahead and fence out at this point. So we'll go back to navigation master mode, so hit the A, G, air to ground master mode button to go back to navigation mode. Master arm off and external lights back on.
Where was the external lights again?
Back by your left hip.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
Alright, I'm going to put my jet on autopilot here.
Okay.
And I'm just going to fly it in a circle. And let's fly towards waypoint 8, which should be on top of our runway here. And let's descend down to 5,000 feet. And I'm just going to guide you through a nice, gentle, just very easy, straight in landing for today.
Okay.
Your autopilot's on, and that's why it keeps trying to pull you back up, I think.
Oh.
Yep. Was your autopilot on while you were trying to drop bombs?
I don't think so. It was. I kept trying to turn it back on, but I would break my own altitude with it
Gotcha.
beforehand.
So keep coming around to steer point 8. Keep the turn coming. A little bit of a tighter turn, so that way we get lined up for the runway here.
Okay.
Remember, no rudders, just the stick.
Okay.
So that airfield there is not your airfield. The airfield's actually off to the left-hand side at waypoint 8. So it's over there. See the point marker in your HMD?
Yep.
So that is a different airfield. I think that's Al Ain International Airport. That's a civilian airport. Alright. So now we have to set up and get the geometry right. So let's go ahead and keep coming on down to 2,000 feet and start bringing that power back and throw the boards out so that way you get slowed down. Get that speed brake out there, power to idle.
How do you do power to idle?
Pull the throttle all the way back. There you go.
Is it?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep, you're good. As long as your HOTAS throttle's all the way back, you're at idle.
Oh, okay.
And VGE, which is your speed for gear extension, is 250 knots. So as soon as we get the... okay, so can you see the airfield there with the runway?
Yep.
Off to the right? Perfect. Keep flying this direction. Don't turn towards it yet. We want to get in line for the runway. So we got to get the geometry right for a straight-in approach.
Okay.
And it looks like we're a bit high for our distance to the runway. So let's make a descending to 360-degree turn to the left. Try not to pull back too much. Keep that descent coming. Just nice and gentle. Now you can pull back just slightly, just a little bit. Okay, that's looking better. Alright, I think our altitude's going to be fine. And there's our speed. Or it's getting close to it, so let's get the gear down.
Okay.
And keep the speed brakes fully extended for me.
So I hold that down the entire time?
You just want to press and hold it until they're fully extended, then you can let go of it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we just want to keep on slowing down. And you see that little, like, staple that just showed up on your HUD?
Kinda.
So we want to make sure that we get slow enough that we get our velocity vector inside that staple. It's that kind of like vertical looking staple.
Right.
It looks like a staple on its side. Alright, so now start adding a little bit of power so we don't get too slow. And we need to start bringing our velocity vector onto the runway. So keep coming to the right. Come to the right slightly. We need to get the geometry right for the straight in for the runway.
Okay.
Don't worry about the rudders. We're not using rudders, so we're on the ground. And keep that descent coming just a little bit. Alright, keep coming this direction. That's looking good right there. Keep going, keep going. Keep going. And come slightly left towards the runway. We're starting to get lined up. And make sure to pull the throttle back a little bit. We need to slow down.
Okay.
Alright, keep the throttle coming back. Throttle coming back. Probably go to idle right now. And keep that nose down. We want to put that velocity vector right in the touchdown zone markers. Push the stick forward a little bit. There you go, right there. Bring it some throttle.
Oh,
We're starting to
okay.
get behind the power curve, so we're descending pretty rapidly. Bring that throttle up. No worries. Alright, so now we just need to get back. That's looking good. Just keep it coming down. Nice and gentle, nice and easy.
Okay.
And power to idle.
Okay.
And just hold it here, wait till she settles on down. And now do a wheelie. Oh, nose
Do a
came
wheelie.
down, that's okay. Yep, so do that wheelie down the runway. And that's going to
Okay.
really bleed off that airspeed. Now start to get on the brakes.
Okay.
And gentle. Nice and easy. Easy with the rudder, so that way you don't accidentally flip your jet over.
Okay.
And there you go. So see how that wheelie, doing that wheelie, that aero braking down
Yeah.
the runway really slowed you down a lot?
Right. That was sick.
And
That helped
ideally,
a lot.
yeah, ideally we want to try and touch down a little more gently so that way your nose doesn't slam down, because he's had to kind of pick it back up again.
Right.
So if you want, you can despawn, and I'll share my screen here and show you what it's like from my perspective.
Okay.
Okay, let me share my screen here.
How do I turn mine off?
There you go. You got it.
Okay.
Okay, sharing my screen. And can you see my cockpit?
Yep, got it.
Perfect. So I'm going to turn on the controls indicator here, which now you can see my throttle moving on the left there, as well as my stick in the center there. So you can see what I'm doing with my stick and throttle. Uh-oh. I think my DCS just crashed. What is going on? Okay, that was weird.
Oh, you're
Discord.
back on my screen.
Yeah, that was weird. Discord streaming has been weird lately, so hopefully we won't have any more problems. So, number one thing is we need to get the geometry for the runway correct, right? So, the better you can get lined up on the runway, the further out, the better your shape you're going to be. So the runway goes this direction, right? So if we were to draw a line out into, forever, basically, the earlier we get onto this line, the easier it's going to be. Because out here, you're kind of going like this to the runway. Does that make
Right.
sense? You're kind of like
Yeah.
S turning to the runway. So what I'm going to do here is I can see our airfield right over there. And this was the airport you thought we were going for. So I'm just going to do a descending 270 to the right. And that way I can get nice and lined up while also losing altitude. I'm just keeping an eye on my runway here. And we can see we're already nice and lined up for the runway. And that way we don't have to make any turns when we're nice and close into the runway. I can turn off my HMD now. And it looks like we're slightly off to the right-hand side of the course for the runway. So I'm just going to keep the altitude coming down. We know that Almenhad Air Base is roughly about 200 feet above sea level. And when landing an airplane, it's really just all about patience. Patience, patience, patience. We don't want to rush it, because if we rush it, we could make a mistake that might be hard to recover from.
Is there any way? This is probably a dumb question. There's only you can only carry 6 AMRAAMs, right? There's no way to carry like a double payload.
Nope, you can only carry 6 on the F-16, unfortunately. Okay, so we're nice and lined up here. So we're still coming on down. And then from as far out as possible, we want to try and get our velocity vector on the runway where we want to touch down.
So your velocity vector being the circle with the line.
Yep.
Okay.
It's this little guy here that looks like an airplane. That's where your airplane is going. So wherever you put that, that's where your airplane's going to go. And we'll start to slow down. We'll start to get to gear extension speed. And configuring the aircraft for landing, so getting the landing gear down, just getting ready to land further out is no problem with that. Especially when you're learning how to do it. The further out you get configured, the easier it's going to be for you. Just flying the jet as we're slowing down to keep the velocity vector right on the runway. And looking at the controls indicator in the bottom left, you can see just how gentle and smooth and easy my control inputs are. So there's 250 knots, so we can get the gear out. And you can see when the gear comes down, the jet automatically extends the flaps. And so we get that little like kind of bump, and we can see the velocity vector kind of climbed up a little bit there because from that extra amount of lift that those flaps provide. And one thing that I also like to do is potentially sometimes turn down the brightness of my HUD, so that way I can see through the symbology a little bit easier to see the runway.
Right on. So now that little, you call that the end zone, or the touchdown area, that little vertical bracket?
No, so the touchdown zone is on the runway itself. So if we zoom in on the runway, you see the little white markers on the end of the runway there?
Yeah.
That's the touchdown zone.
Oh, okay.
Yep. The little staple that you can see on the HUD, this little vertical line here, that is guiding you to be at the perfect angle of attack for landing. So as we slow down, the jet is going to get closer and closer and closer to being in that staple. And you can also see this reflected over on the AOA indexer over here. And we ideally want to touch down with a green donut right in the middle. Sometimes that's a little bit on the slow side, but we will see. So I'm just slowly bringing the airplane down. We're also in what's called the region of reverse command, where when we get slow and we got our flaps and gear out, we don't want to climb by pulling the stick back. All we want to do is push the throttle forward. If I push the throttle forward, my velocity vector comes up. If I pull it back, my velocity vector comes down. It's the reverse of how you would fly in normal forward flight. That's why it's called the region of reverse command. But as we keep coming down, we're just being nice and gentle with it, just trying to keep that velocity vector glued right onto the touchdown zone. See how much my throttle is moving? We're always adjusting the throttle. Always.
What do you want to hit the air? What's the maximum speed to hit the ground?
It's basically predicated on, I would pause it to explain this, but let me get on the ground first. So here we go. We're coming over the overrun, throttle to idle. We're going to flare. And gentle touchdown. And we're going to keep the nose up, doing that nice wheelie down the runway, doing that aero braking, keeping that nose up all the way down until we just can't keep it up any longer. Nose comes down, and we're just going to gently get on the brakes. We don't want to slam on the brakes because that could get us into a bit of a skidding situation. Even though we have anti-skid brakes, we don't want to...
Are you using the air brakes?
Nope, it's going to be the wheel brakes once we're on the runway. Yep.
Only? Okay.
Yep. So when you land, we can see that our speed brakes are already extended, right? Because we did that when we got the gear down. So in the F-16, you always want to have the air brakes fully extended for landing. Now there's two reasons for this. Reason number one, you have more drag to slow you down once you're on the runway. But reason number 2 is if you carry more drag to the runway, that's going to force you to spool up your engine and have your engine at a higher RPM to maintain altitude and airspeed, because you're fighting against that drag with your engine. And the reason why that's important is because an engine, or a jet engine I should say, will spool up faster above 50% RPM than below 50% RPM. So we want to ideally have our engines up higher in the throttle length of travel while we're landing than all the way back at idle, because it takes a long time for the engine to spool up from idle to full power, especially if we have to do a go-around or something of that nature. When it comes to the speed for the landing, in a fighter jet, you really don't need to know what speed you need to land at, because you have AOA indicators, which is this guy here as well as this little staple inside the HUD. So if your velocity vector is inside the staple or really close to the top of it there, then you know you're at the correct speed for landing. Because to land the jet, you have to be at the proper AOA, which means you're going to be at the proper speed. If you're going too fast, your velocity vector won't be inside the staple.
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. The reason is, of course, if we're slower, we're not developing as much lift off of our wings, which means we have to be at a higher angle of attack. So, ergo, if you're too fast, you won't ever get inside the staple. Make sense?
Yep.
Awesome, man. Any other questions or concerns before we end it here?
No, you gave me a lot to work on for the next couple weeks, so